My name is Adriana Carvin, and today I'll be reviewing Poison Study by Maria Snyder. Hi. Poison Study is an adult fantasy novel. Little bit of stress on the adult part. There are some darker themes that are probably not appropriate for younger audiences. But I think they do add a lot of depth for older audiences. This story takes place in a fantasy realm where a recent rebellion has put a commander in charge of the entire country, and beneath him are several generals that rule the provinces. We start our story with a young woman on death row for murdering one of those generals' sons. She is offered a job as the food taster for the commander. While she is on her way to be hung, she decides to take the job instead of being hung. And part of the mystery element of this novel is like kind of figuring out the circumstances of why she murdered this general's son and the abuses that she maintained while under this general's care as an orphan. I think it's a really cool story with a fairly interesting twist at the end. I think it's a very approachable story as far as fantasy goes. I'm not a huge high epic fantasy person, so I'm always a little nervous getting into a fantasy story, but I think it's kind of a Game of Thrones type feel with the magic system where there is magic in the world, but it's not a huge driver of the plot. The plot is very human focused. And speaking of human, our protagonist, Elena, I think is one of the best young female leads that I've ever read. I think she's only about 18 or 19 in this story, which is kind of dipping into that YA female protagonist where she could have been like a typical female protagonist that I need to do everything myself, and a lot of the plot and tension and conflict is driven by the fact that she won't talk to anybody, she won't let anybody help her, but this is not the case. I think she's very open and makes just a lot of really smart decisions and a lot of decisions that I think most women would make. So it makes her feel a lot more real, and I think part of that is that because this is an adult novel, there's a couple other ways that the author can introduce conflict and tension into the story. And I think, this author is a woman, so I think she just understands the way we think a little better than a male author would. So I overall think this is a really great novel and a really great story, and I think, if you haven't read and you are somewhat interested in fantasy or magic or cool female protagonists, I think this is a great story to read and pick up. So that's it for my non-spoiler review. I think, like I said, if you haven't read it, go read it. If you have read it, stick around and I'll tell you a little bit more of what I think about the story. So getting into some spoilers, 3, 2, 1, now. I think the romance between Valek and Elena is really incredible. It's definitely like a romance subplot. It doesn't really, I guess it drives the plot a little bit. But I think for, most of the book it's not really there, and you just kind of get a little bit of tension building. And, I think what's cool about this story is that it takes place over such a long period of time that the romance feels really natural and well-paced and earned. As opposed to something like insta-love. So yeah, I really enjoyed that part of the story. The only other thing I wanted to say in this spoiler part is Commander Ambrose's backstory. I really hope in the sequels we get to see a little bit more about how his transition really affected, his rise in the rebellion. So yeah, I think it'd be really interesting to see. Like, you don't get to see a lot of transgender characters in fantasy novels, and especially for a novel written in 2005, I think it's really cool. So I hope we get to see more of him in the sequels, but I guess we'll see. Thanks for watching.